Hey folks, this is Aleki and you're watching Stationeers for Beginners. In this video, we're going to talk about fluids and pipe networks. This is, in my opinion, by far one of the most complex systems in Stationeers. Today, we're probably going to scratch only the surface of basic concepts and look at some of the starting gear that you have that relates to it. Manipulating liquids and gases is involved in almost anything else that you do in Stationeers. Whether it's finding a way to replenish your oxygen so that your character doesn't suffocate, replenishing your fuel so you can keep using your welding torch, building a greenhouse that has a suitable environment for your plants to grow in, which involves controlling the pressure, composition, and temperature of the atmosphere inside it. Almost anything you do is going to require manipulating the temperature and pressure and composition of gases. In order to know what an atmosphere or the contents of a pipe network is made out of, you will be using your handheld tablet. As we saw in the electricity episode, the handheld tablet requires a cartridge. The cartridge determines what functionality it will provide you. So to do any kind of atmosphere analysis, you need to place the Atmos analyzer in the cartridge slot of the tablet. Then, you can point it at the pipe network or at an environment and get a summary of what the contents in terms of gases and liquids of that network or environment are. Since I'm pointing at the world itself, I can see what the atmosphere of Mars is made up of, as well as its current temperature. Keep in mind that the planetary temperature changes from day and night usually. So here we can see that the pressure on Mars is 2.69 kilopascals. There is no liquid in the atmosphere. It has a capacity of 8,000 liters. This is a little bit misleading. Obviously, the entire planet does not have a capacity of just 8,000 liters, but 8,000 is the volume of a grid cube. That corresponds to grid cubes being 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters, which would give them a volume of 8 cubed meters or 8,000 liters. I'm sorry if you're used to imperial units. Playing Stationeers, you're probably going to have to get used to a certain amount of dealing with metric units. You can also see the temperature of the atmosphere, which right now it is 10.5 degrees Celsius. On Mars, as the day progresses, the temperature will change between roughly about 20 degrees Celsius and negative 40 degrees Celsius. The composition of the atmosphere is shown in the bottom part of the tablet. The Mars atmosphere is made up of 95% carbon dioxide, 2.96% nitrogen, 1.44% oxygen, and 0.6% pollutants. Now that you understand how to monitor the composition of an atmosphere, let's take a look at some of the items that you start with. In our electricity episode, we built an active vent. However, not connected to a pipe network, that vent was not able to function. Let's build another one. I already set up a power controller that will supply us with some power as we test out the atmospherics tools. The active vent, in addition to its power switch, also has an inward or outward switch. Keep in mind the setting of the button is the opposite of the tooltip. So if it says set inward, the vent will be pumping outward. If it says outward, then the vent will be pumping inward. As I mentioned in the electricity episode, in order for this vent to function, it requires a pipe network connected to this large port on the opposite side of the electricity connector. So let's get it connected. Pipes are built using the kit pipe. And like the wiring, it has 8 different types, which correspond to 8 different shapes. Most of the time, when you're working with pipe networks, you will be using the wrench. And in fact, you can use the wrench the same as we use the cable cutters to add to pre-existing pipes and form junctions. You can also place junctions by selecting the correct type and rotate them the way we learned in the construction episode. So let's take a look at what is inside these pipes after you build them. As you can see, the pipe network is completely empty. The pipe network also has a capacity of 30 liters. That is because we have 3 pipe segments here, the curved one and 2 T-junctions. And each segment will have a capacity of 10 liters. So let's see what happens if we set our vent to inward and turn it on for a short moment. The active vent takes gases from its environment, so it is pulling in Mars's atmosphere, and pushes it into this pipe network. As you can see here, we have a pretty large amount of gas quite quickly. The active vent is fairly efficient at moving gases from the atmosphere into a pipe, or vice versa. So even though the Mars atmosphere is only 2.69 kilopascals, the few moments that we ran the vent for already reached a pressure of 3.25 megapascals inside the pipe network. For pipe networks, the limit before they burst is 60 megapascals. When analyzing a pipe network, your tablet will give you a few extra pieces of information. The convected and radiated displays show you how much energy is received or lost by this network. For example, the pipe we're looking at is convecting about 4 microjoules of energy right now. That is because the pipe, as an uninsulated pipe type, will heat exchange with its environment. Let's see what happens if we pump some more gas in here. As the pressure is increasing, some of the pollutants will start to condense. Depending on the pressure and temperature of a gas, some or all of it may condense into a liquid. Likewise, a liquid can evaporate into gas. This is very similar to how if you have a can of deodorant in real life and shake it, you can feel liquid sloshing inside. That is because the gas inside the deodorant can is highly compressed. However, when you spray it, it will not release a liquid, it will be a gas, because as it expands, it turns back into a gas. Explaining in details the functioning of gas transformations is beyond the scope of a Stationeers tutorial. Gases in Stationeers do follow the ideal gas law, so referencing some physics tutorials on that is going to help you with more complex systems. As you can see, I left this vent to pump gas inward. However, the pressure stopped at 50.7 megapascals. That is due to the fact that the active vent has an internal safety limiter, which prevents it from pumping to a higher pressure than 50.7 megapascals in its pipe network. That helps it not explode your pipe networks, because the limit of pressure for the pipes is 60 megapascals. At this point, because the pressure is so high, all of the pollutants we had have turned to liquid. And because we have liquid in a gas pipe, we are getting a certain level of stress on the pipe. In the top right, the stress is at 27.5%. Thankfully, because the pollutants are such a small percentage of the gas we pumped in, the liquid is not enough to destroy the pipe. However, if you were to put a gas that is turning to liquid in a higher percentage, the pipe would start taking damage from having liquid in it and eventually be destroyed. As you would expect in real life, if you reduce the volume of something, then the pressure will increase. So let's see what happens if I remove one of the pieces of pipe. Now the pressure is at 76.2. Because we reduced the volume, the pressure in the remaining volume has increased. Essentially, the gas that was in our third segment has been pushed into just these two. The stress has also increased, and these pipes are above their bursting pressure. If we look at the tooltip for the pipe, you will see that it is taking damage. Right now, the section is at 50% damage, and that is increasing as it continues to stay in a state of overpressurization. The tooltip also tells you why is it taking damage. In the current case, it's taking damage because of overpressure. Quick aside here. The sounds that the pipe network makes can let you know whether it is simply nearing its bursting pressure or if it is actually taking damage. I built up quite a bit of pressure in these pipes, however, they are not to what the game considers close to bursting just yet. As I add more, when I increase the pressure to what the game considers close to bursting, the pipes will start groaning, or as some people call it, singing. This simply tells you that the pipes are near their maximum pressure, but they are not yet taking any damage. As you can see, the tooltip tells us it is dangerously high, but no damage is building up. I'm gonna grab my wrench and disassemble one segment, forcing that pressure over the bursting limit. Note that now the groaning has turned to a creaking sound. The creaking denotes that the pipe is taking damage. This is important to pay attention to while playing because some of your system might overpressurize inadvertently, and listening for and tracking down where the problem is before they burst can be a lifesaver. Now, let's get back to it. A pipe can also take damage from containing too much liquid, if it is a gas pipe, or conversely too much gas if it is a liquid pipe, and from any of the gas or liquid turning into a solid. Freezing will damage a pipe very, very quickly. So let's see what happens when the damage reaches 100%. At 100% damage, the pipe bursts, and the gas from that pipe network will be released into the atmosphere. Quickly, the pressure drops and equalizes with the outside. Unlike a burnt-out cable, a burst pipe does have one potential use. Since it essentially equalizes the network pressure and contents with the outside world, you could use a burst pipe as an improvised passive vent. If I was to connect this back up to the active vent and start pumping into the active vent, you can see that the atmosphere is coming out of the burst pipe. Obviously, in this setup, this is not particularly useful, but imagine that this pipe ended inside or outside the current room. That would allow me to pump without having a passive vent. This can be useful in the very beginning of the game when you do have an active vent, but you do not start out with any passive vents. If I was to disassemble this burst pipe, like with the broken cable, I would not get anything back. Another item that you start the game with is the kit pipe valve. If you have two sets of pipe, you can place a pipe valve in between them to allow you to connect or disconnect them as well. When the lever of the valve points perpendicular to the pipe or to the red marker, the connection is closed. If you place it on the green marker or along the pipe length, the two pipe networks will be connected. So if I close the valve, pump a little bit of gas in the bottom part of my pipes, I will have gas there, but none has moved to the top network. If I open the valve, the two networks will equalize. The valve also separates networks. As you can see, the one on the bottom is 10693, the one on the top has the ID 10698. You can disassemble a valve using your wrench. And the valve kit allows you to build a few other types of item. The second one is the one-way valve. It does not have a lever, so it will be always open. However, it only allows passage of gas in one direction. My two networks were pretty much equal in pressure from when I connected them with the valve. But if I increase the pressure more in the bottom part of the network, that will equalize in the direction of the arrow to the second pipe network. However, if I empty the bottom network, the top one will not empty because gases cannot pass through the one-way valve, contrary to the arrow. The third and fourth types of the valve kit allow you to build the condensation and expansion valve. The drop of liquid next to the output arrow of the condensation or the input arrow of the expansion indicates that that side of it must be connected to a liquid pipe, not a gas pipe. These work in opposite fashion. The condensation valve allows any liquid from the gas pipe to enter the liquid pipe. Conversely, the expansion valve allows any gas from a liquid pipe to move to the gas network. Both of these have a lever that allow you to open and close them. Obviously, the liquid or gas that they normally allow through will only pass when your lever is set to the on position, marked by the green marker or aligned with the length of pipe. I've mentioned now evaporation and condensation a few times. The way you would know at what pressure and temperature a gas in Stationeers will condense or a liquid evaporate is by using the Stationpedia. We saw earlier that the pollutant that I put under a lot of pressure in the pipe turned to liquid. So let's take a look at pollutant. You will have entries in Stationpedia for the gas and liquid version of this element. However, both will show you the same phase diagram. The phase diagram helps you understand how this material behaves at different temperatures and pressures. You can use this toggle at the top of the graph to display the temperature in Celsius, which is a little bit easier to use because your environmental display and your tablet use Celsius. So let's see how pollutant behaves. This blue line indicates the point at which it will turn into a solid, essentially freeze. So if we were to cool pollutant below about 98 degrees Celsius, as you can see at the bottom of the display, it would freeze. Above that temperature, its state will depend on whether the pressure is above this line, or the given temperature, or below this line. If the pressure is below this line, then it will be a gas. So let's say at about 11 degrees Celsius, which is our current atmospheric temperature, pollutant will be a gas below 3.4 megapascals. You can see that in the bottom right. Above 3.4 megapascals, it will turn into a liquid. As the temperature increases, it will remain a gas at a higher pressure, and you will need to compress it more to turn it into a liquid. However, there is a boiling point beyond which it will always be a gas. So the right side of the graph will always be a gas. Above about 150 degrees, no matter what pressure you were to reach, pollutant will not be a liquid. The graph on the vertical axis shows you the pressure, and it stops at 60,000 megapascals, because that is the limit of any items in the game. While you can reach pressures higher than that, whatever contains this gas will quickly burst beyond that point. So let's put that into action. Let's once again pump some of the atmosphere in this pipe. Right now it is empty. I'm going to switch to intake and pump a little bit. Right now we have 2.06 megapascals. All the gases we put in there are happily staying gases. As we add some more, we're now at 5 megapascals. That is above that condensation point for pollutants, and all of the pollutants we have will gradually turn into liquid. You see, after a few ticks, all the pollutants are now liquid in this pipe. To understand how gases and liquids behave in Stationeers, it's important to understand the concept of a mole. A mole is a unit of measure that tells you how many particles of a certain substance are present. Right now, I have 16.2 mole of CO2 in this pipe. If I was to reduce the volume of the pipe by removing a segment, the number of moles will not change. No particles are added or destroyed. They are simply pushed into a smaller volume. The number of moles is the same, but the pressure of the gas has increased. The number of moles of gas in a container does change as gas is added or removed. Let's take a look at how the amount of moles in various containers change while we look at how to also refill your oxygen. If I take my suit's canister of oxygen and use my analyzer on it, you will see that I have 128 moles remaining. My starter canister had 150 when I first started this world, however my character has been consuming the oxygen to breathe. On your lander, you will start with a portable gas tank of oxygen. To access this tank, you will first need to use the wrench to detach it from the lander. Once it's detached, you can grab it by its handle and put it in a more suitable location. Like with anything else that contains an atmosphere, you can use your tablet to analyze the tank and see that it contains 2.5 kilomoles, that means 2500 moles, of oxygen. You can also see it has a capacity of 790 liters, and that number of moles at the 20 degree Celsius temperature that it has result in a 7.71 megapascal pressure. This portable tank can be used to refill your canister. The lined yellow and black port allows you to insert a canister, and the canister's contents and that of the tank will equalize. If I grab my air tank and insert it in this port, the pressure in the tank will go down and the pressure in the canister will go up to equalize. The pressure in my air tank is now 7.4 megapascals. If I once again look at my canister, instead of 128 mole, I have 196. So about 70 moles were added from the tank into this canister. The tank itself has gone down from 2.5 kilomoles to 2.43. That corresponds to the 70 mole of gas that have moved from the tank into the canister. This portable tank has enough oxygen in it to keep your character alive for a few days. You can refill your suit's canister multiple times from it before the pressure in it will get too low to be useful. In that time, you will need to find alternative sources of oxygen. How to find those is something that we will cover in a future episode. If you found this information useful, give this video a like, and subscribe so that you get notified when I put the next one out. For now, Aleki signing off.